had never imagined that a single moment could unravel everything I thought I knew about my life. It was a typical Thursday evening, the kind that lulled you into a false sense of security. Mark and I had dinner plans, but he was still at work, and I found myself tidying up the kitchen, humming to the tune of my favorite song. As I wiped down the counter, I noticed Mark's phone vibrating on the table. I picked it up absent-mindedly, intending to silence it, but the screen lit up with messages that made my heart drop. "Can't believe you pulled that off, dude. You're a legend," read one from Jake, Mark's best friend. I frowned. My curiosity piqued. I glanced at the other messages, my gut twisting as I read the playful banter that echoed a familiarity I had once found charming. But this time it felt different, more like a betrayal. "Next time, bring her to the party. I need to see if she's as hot as you say." Another message chimed in, this one from Liam. My breath caught in my throat. I knew they were talking about some girl, but the implications swirled in my mind like a storm. My hands trembled as I set the phone down, the laughter of men filtering in from the living room, where I could hear Mark regaling the guys with stories. I had always trusted Mark. He was charming, kind, and regularly spoke about loyalty and love. But as I approached the living room, I felt an unsettling chill crawl down my spine. I stood at the threshold, hidden just out of sight, and listened. And she didn't even know what hit her. Mark laughed, his voice warm and inviting, but it was the subject of his laughter that made my stomach churn. You know how it is, right? Just a little flirting never hurt anyone. The sound of their laughter echoed in my ears, each chuckle feeling like a dagger. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, my heart pounding furiously in my chest. How could he? The betrayal was worse than anything I could have imagined. He had painted himself as the devoted husband, and here he was spinning tales of flirtation and conquests, all while I waited for him at home. "Seriously, you should teach me your ways, man," Ryan chimed in, his tone teasing, but I could sense a hint of admiration. "You've got it all figured out." "Yeah, man, you're living the dream," Liam added, his voice dripping with envy. "I'm just trying to keep up with you." I felt sick, every word piercing through me like 1,000 needles. My mind raced. I had always seen Mark as the good guy, but now I was left questioning everything. I stepped back, my heart heavy with anger and hurt. I couldn't believe I had been so blind. As I retreated to the kitchen, a plan began to form in my mind, fueled by the betrayal that had just unraveled before me. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and I could feel the icy determination settling in my bones. I would make them pay for their arrogance, for making a fool out of me. But how? The thought danced tantalizingly in my mind. I had to keep my plans close to my chest, hidden behind a mask of normalcy. I took a deep breath and re-entered the living room, forcing a smile as I approached the group. "Hey, guys. Sorry I'm late," I said sweetly, trying to mask the storm brewing inside me. "What are you all chatting about?" Mark turned his gaze to me, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of genuine affection in his eyes. "Just some stories from the old days," he replied, his voice warm, but I felt a chill run through me. The old days, indeed. As I sat down, I couldn't help but feel a sense of empowerment course through me. I would play the part of the dutiful wife, but underneath, I was plotting my revenge. I would take a piece of each of his friends, one by one, until he felt the sting of betrayal I had just experienced. I smiled at the thought, and for the first time in a long while, I felt in control. "Emily, you okay?" Mark asked, a hint of concern in his voice. "Of course, darling," I replied, my smile never faltering. "Just thinking about how much I love our life together." The laughter continued, but now it felt hollow, a mask covering the chaos within me. I couldn't wait to set my plan into motion. When the doorbell rang, my heart raced. I opened the door to find Jake leaning against the frame, a playful grin on his face. "Hey there, need a knight in shining armor?" he teased, his blue eyes sparkling with mischief. I chuckled, trying to maintain my composure. "More like a handyman in jeans. Come on in." As we moved to the kitchen, I poured us both a glass of wine. The atmosphere was light, filled with laughter and teasing banter. "You know, I always thought you were the one who kept everything together," he said, leaning against the counter, his gaze piercing into mine. "Mark is lucky to have you." "Is he?" I replied, a bitter edge creeping into my tone. "He seems to have a funny way of showing it." Jake's expression shifted slightly, sensing the undertone of my words. "What do you mean?" Before I could even think through my emotions, I blurted out, "I overheard him talking to you guys the other night. The stories he tells. It's like he doesn't care at all." Jake's face fell, and for a moment I saw genuine concern in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Emily. Mark can be, well, let's just say he's not the most faithful guy out there." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. I don't know why I thought I could trust him. "Sometimes the ones we trust the most end up hurting us the worst," Jake said softly, his voice almost a whisper. I could feel the tension in the air, a magnetic pull drawing us closer. Before I could second-guess myself, I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. Our eyes locked, and in that instant, the world around us faded. I reached up, lightly touching his cheek, and leaned in. Our lips met, and a rush of heat flooded my body. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. The kiss deepened, and I felt a mix of guilt and exhilaration. It was wrong, but it also felt like a release, an escape from the pain Mark had caused me. Jake's hands found their way to my waist, pulling me closer, and I melted into him, reveling in the moment. As we pulled away breathless, I looked into his eyes, searching for clarity. "What have I done?" I whispered, a wave of guilt crashing over me. "Something you needed to do, maybe," he replied, his voice steady yet filled with an undertone of mischief. "You deserve to feel desired, Emily. Mark doesn't appreciate you." "I know, but this isn't the way to handle it," I argued, my mind racing. Yet a part of me felt empowered, awakening something within me that I thought had been buried. "Maybe it is," Jake countered, a devilish grin spreading across his face. "Let's just see where this goes, huh?" I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of my decision. I had crossed a line, but in that moment, it felt liberating. As we moved to the bedroom, I couldn't shake the mix of emotions swirling within me: guilt, anger, and an undeniable thrill. Laying there beside him, I closed my eyes, allowing the warmth of his body to envelop me. I felt alive, but also aware of the storm I was about to unleash. This was just the beginning of my revenge, and I couldn't help but smile at the thought of what was to come. The thrill of plotting against Mark and his friends made my heart race in a way I hadn't felt in years. As the night wore on, I drifted into a restless sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had done and what I was willing to do next. The pieces of my plan were falling into place, and for the first time in a long while, I felt in control. As I lay in bed with Jake, the thrill of our affair coursed through me like electricity. The weight of guilt was a heavy blanket, but it was also exhilarating. I had crossed a line, but in my mind, it was a line drawn by Mark's betrayal. I didn't just want to hurt him. I wanted to make him feel the way I felt, betrayed, insecure, and angry. The plan was unfolding, and I was ready for the next step. I needed to move on to Ryan. I had always found comfort in his down-to-earth nature. He was the kind of friend who offered solid advice, but I sensed a deeper connection simmering just beneath the surface. It was time to exploit that connection. I picked up my phone and sent him a text. "Hey Ryan, I could really use your advice this weekend. Mind coming over? I think I might need a getaway." His response came quickly. "Of course. I'm always here for you. Just let me know the time." With a flutter of excitement, I set the stage for our rendezvous. I planned an intimate weekend at a cozy cabin just a few hours from the city. I imagined the scene: a warm fire crackling, wine flowing, and the weight of our conversations lifting the tension that had been building between us. When the day arrived, I packed my bag with care, choosing a soft, flowing dress that hinted at allure without being overtly seductive. I wanted to draw Ryan in without scaring him off. As I drove to the cabin, anticipation bubbled within me, each mile marking a step closer to my revenge. Ryan arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. He stepped out of his car, his familiar smile brightening my mood. "Wow, this place is amazing, Em," he said, taking in the rustic charm. "Thanks. I thought it would be the perfect spot for us to unwind," I replied, trying to keep my voice casual. But inside, my heart raced. We settled in, and I poured us both a glass of wine. As we sipped, the conversation flowed easily, just as it always had, but tonight felt different, charged with an unspoken tension. "Are you okay?" Ryan asked, his brow furrowing slightly. "You seem a bit off." I took a deep breath, pretending to ponder over my marital woes. "I guess I'm just feeling lost. Mark has been distant, and I don't know what to do." Ryan leaned forward, his expression softening. "You deserve to be happy, Emily. Don't let him hold you back." His words resonated deeply within me. I felt a rush of emotions, and before I knew it, I found myself inching closer to him. "I appreciate you being here for me, Ryan. You always know what to say." He looked into my eyes, the air thick with unspoken possibilities. "You know I care about you, right?" In that moment, the tension snapped. I leaned in, our lips meeting softly at first, then with increasing urgency. The kiss ignited a fire within me, pushing aside any remnants of guilt. I was no longer just the wronged wife. I was a woman reclaiming her power. We stumbled into the bedroom, the dim light from the fireplace casting flickering shadows on the walls. As we kissed, my hands tangled in his hair, and I felt a sense of exhilaration wash over me. This was not just about revenge. It was about feeling alive again. "Are you sure about this?" Ryan whispered, pulling away slightly, searching my eyes for clarity. "I am," I breathed, my heart pounding with desire and defiance. "I want this." With that, we surrendered to the moment, the world outside fading away. As we lost ourselves in each other, I couldn't help but feel a mix of triumph and confusion. I had crossed another line, but I was doing it for me, for my own sense of justice. The night unfolded like a dream, passion igniting every corner of the room. But beneath it all, I knew I was still playing a dangerous game. I had plans to execute, and this was just another chapter in my revenge saga. As I lay next to Ryan, wrapped in the warmth of our shared intimacy, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was all just the beginning. As I dressed for the night, a mixture of excitement and anxiety churned in my stomach. I glanced in the mirror, adjusting my hair one last time. The crimson dress I wore hugged my curves perfectly, a stark reminder of the confidence I felt in the wake of my recent decisions. Tonight, I was meeting Liam, one of Mark's closest friends, and I could already feel the electricity crackling in the air. This was a pivotal moment in my plan for revenge, and I intended to savor every second of it. I arrived at the bar, the atmosphere buzzing with laughter and clinking glasses. The moment I walked in, my eyes scanned the room until they landed on Liam. He was leaning against the bar, his signature smirk plastered on his face. The blue of his shirt complemented his deep brown eyes, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of adrenaline as I approached him. "Hey, gorgeous," he greeted me, his voice smooth and inviting. "You look stunning tonight." "Thanks," I replied, trying to sound casual as my heart raced. "I thought I'd wear something special for our little outing." Liam raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Special, huh? I like the sound of that. Let's get some drinks and see where the night takes us." As we settled into a corner booth, the drinks flowed freely, and laughter filled the air between us. I found myself increasingly drawn to Liam's charm. He was playful and confident, effortlessly making me forget, even if a penis for a moment, the betrayal I had been nursing. "Tell me, Emily," he said, leaning in slightly, his tone teasing. "What's a girl like you doing with someone like Mark? He doesn't deserve you." I felt a flicker of annoyance at the mention of Mark, but I brushed it off. "I could ask you the same question about being friends with him. He's not exactly the saint he pretends to be." Liam chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. "Touché. But tonight's not about him. Tonight's about us." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my skin. "What do you say we make the most of it?" The air between us thickened, and I felt a rush of desire. "I think I'd like that," I breathed, leaning in just a bit more. Our faces were mere inches apart, and I could see the mischief dancing in his eyes. Before I knew it, we were caught in a whirlwind of passion, our lips crashing together in a heated kiss that sent sparks through my entire being. The world around us faded as we lost ourselves in each other, and I let go of the guilt that had been clinging to me. This was my revenge, and it felt intoxicating. "Let's get out of here," Liam suggested, his voice husky with desire. "My place is just around the corner." I hesitated for a moment, but the thrill of the night swept over me, drowning out any sense of caution. "Okay," I agreed, my heart racing with anticipation. As we arrived at Liam's apartment, the atmosphere crackled with tension. He opened the door and led me inside, his hands finding my waist as he pulled me closer. The dim light cast a warm glow over the room, and I felt a surge of exhilaration wash over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for. We stumbled into the living room, where he pressed me against the wall, our kisses growing more fervent. My thoughts momentarily drifted to Mark, how he would react when he discovered my betrayal. But in that moment, I pushed those thoughts aside, lost in the heat of the moment with Liam. "God, you're incredible," he murmured, his lips trailing down my neck, igniting a fire within me. I felt alive, powerful, like I had reclaimed a piece of myself that Mark had tried to diminish. "Liam," I gasped, my body responding eagerly to his touch as I reveled in the thrill of my revenge. I was no longer just Emily, the devoted wife. I was a woman reclaiming her power, and I intended to enjoy every moment of it. Even as our bodies intertwined in the heat of passion, a part of me couldn't help but wonder what the fallout would be. Would Mark ever find out? Would his friends stand by him, or would they turn against him? The questions lingered in my mind, but I banished them for now, choosing instead to immerse myself in the ecstasy of the night. In the haze of our intimacy, I found solace in the thought that I was finally taking control. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was the architect of my own revenge, and nothing could stop me now. The night air was thick with tension as I approached Ethan's apartment. I had spent the day wrestling with my thoughts, the culmination of my revenge edging closer. I didn't plan on seeing Ethan again after our last encounter, but he had reached out, suggesting we get together to catch up. I knew better than to let my guard down, but there was something about him that piqued my interest. Maybe it was his quiet demeanor, or perhaps the way he always seemed to understand more than he let on. As I stepped into his place, the familiar scent of sandalwood greeted me, mingling with the faint notes of something cooking. "Hey, Emily," he said softly, turning from the kitchen where he was stirring a pot. "I hope you're hungry." "Starving," I replied, forcing a smile as I recalled the meals I used to share with Mark. "What's on the menu?" "It's a surprise," he winked, playful mischief dancing in his eyes. I felt a spark of excitement. Ethan had always been the reserved one, the listener in our group. But tonight, there was an energy between us that felt different. We settled on the couch after dinner, a bottle of wine open between us. The conversation flowed easily, moving from lighthearted banter to deeper topics. "You know," Ethan said, looking serious for a moment, "I've always admired your strength, Emily. You handle everything with such grace." "Thanks, Ethan. That means a lot," I replied, caught off guard. I was expecting the usual small talk, not this level of sincerity. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You deserve to be happy, you know? Not just settling for what you have." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I felt my heart race. Was he implying what I thought he was? I'm not sure what you mean," I stammered, trying to maintain some semblance of composure. "Come on, Emily. You're too smart for that. You deserve someone who will appreciate you, not take you for granted." His gaze was intense, and I felt exposed under his scrutiny. "I guess I've been questioning a lot lately," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Things with Mark aren't what they used to be." Ethan nodded, his expression softening. "You deserve better." In that moment, I found myself leaning closer to him, drawn in by the warmth of his words and the unspoken tension between us. It was wrong. I knew that. But the thrill of it all, of being desired and understood, was intoxicating. Suddenly, he reached out, his hand brushing against mine. Emily, I need to tell you something. What is it? My heart raced, anticipation swirling in my stomach. I've had feelings for you for a long time, he confessed, his voice low and steady. I thought it was just a silly crush, but it's more than that. I care about you. The confession sent a jolt through me. Part of me wanted to pull away, to remind him of my plan, to tell him that this was all part of my revenge against Mark. But another part, the part that was tired of feeling like a fool, was ready to embrace this unexpected affection. Ethan, I started, but he interrupted, his eyes searching mine. Don't say anything you're not ready to. Just know that I'm here for you. Without thinking, I leaned in and kissed him. It was a moment of reckless abandon, a fusion of all the emotions I had been bottling up. The kiss deepened, and in that instant, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known I craved. But as his hands moved to my waist, a pang of guilt twisted in my stomach. What was I doing? I pulled back, breathless. This is wrong, I whispered, my heart pounding. Is it? He asked, his brow furrowing in concern. You're not happy, Emily. I can see that. I can't just forget what Mark did. I can't do this to you, I replied, torn between the thrill of revenge and the unexpected connection I was forging with Ethan. Maybe this is your chance to reclaim your happiness, he suggested gently. You don't have to keep doing this alone. As I looked into his eyes, I felt the weight of my choices press down on me. I had come here to seal my revenge, to complete my mission, but now I found myself tangled in emotions I hadn't anticipated. The line between right and wrong blurred, and all I could think of was how my actions would ripple through our lives. Maybe you're right, I murmured, feeling a mix of triumph and confusion. Whatever was happening between us was undeniable, but I knew I had a reckoning ahead. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and chatter as I walked into the reunion hall, the familiar faces of Mark's friends surrounding me. I felt a mix of exhilaration and anxiety coursing through my veins. My heart raced as I clutched the hidden camera in my pocket, its weight a constant reminder of the plan I had meticulously crafted. I spotted Mark across the room, his laughter ringing out like a siren call, oblivious to the tempest brewing just beneath the surface. "Emily, there you are!" Jake exclaimed, his grin widening as he approached me. His enthusiasm was infectious, but I felt a slight twinge of guilt. I had crossed a line with him, and yet here he was, acting as if nothing had happened. "You look amazing. How have you been?" I forced a smile, knowing that I had to keep my composure. "Thanks, Jake. Just living life, you know?" I replied, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. As I scanned the room, my eyes landed on Ryan, who caught my gaze and nodded. He looked genuinely pleased to see me, perhaps unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. Liam was nearby, laughing with a group, and I could feel the heat of his gaze even from a distance. Each of them had played a role in my plan, and the thought sent a thrill down my spine. "Hey, is that a new camera?" Ryan asked, noticing the bulge in my pocket. "You planning to take some pics?" "Something like that," I replied, my heart racing. I could feel the adrenaline surging through me. I just want to capture all the memories. "Good idea," he said, oblivious to my real intentions as he wandered off to grab a drink. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived. I gathered my courage and made my way to the center of the room, where Mark stood regaling his friends with another outrageous story. And then I told her, "If you think that's bad, wait until you hear about my wife." He burst into laughter, and the others joined in, their eyes glimmering with amusement. I felt a fire ignite within me. This was it, the moment of truth. I stepped forward, my heart pounding louder than the laughter around me. "Mark!" I called, my voice slicing through the chatter. He turned, surprise etched across his face. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "I'm here to share some memories, too," I said, raising the camera. "Let's take a look at the real stories from tonight, shall we?" I pressed play, and the room fell silent. The footage of my encounters with each of his friends played out in vivid detail on the screen, the intimacy of our moments juxtaposed against the laughter of their betrayal. Gasps filled the room as their faces drained of color, shock, and disbelief, replacing the jovial atmosphere. "Emily, what the hell is this?" Mark shouted, stepping forward, rage flickering in his eyes. "Just a little collection of memories, Mark. You know, to remind everyone about loyalty and trust," I retorted, my voice steady as I held his gaze. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" Liam interjected, looking genuinely bewildered. "Not a joke, Liam, just a reality check," I shot back, feeling a surge of power as I faced them all. Just as the tension reached its peak, the door swung open and a stranger walked in. He was tall, with an air of confidence that immediately drew the attention of everyone in the room. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking between me and the chaos unfurling around us. "Who are you?" Mark spat, his anger redirecting toward the newcomer. "I'm someone who knows Emily," he replied, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. "And it seems like I'm not the only one with secrets tonight." The room fell into an uneasy silence, the air thick with confusion and betrayal. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, questions hanging in the air like a dense fog. My heart raced as I tried to process the implications of his words. Who was he? What did he know? "Emily, what's going on?" Ryan asked, his voice laced with concern. And for the first time, I felt a crack in the facade I had so carefully constructed. "Let's just say," I began, my voice low and steady, "that we all have our stories to tell." And as I stared into the eyes of my husband and his friends, I wondered just how deep the betrayal ran, and what other secrets were lurking beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. The night had only just begun, and I was ready to expose the truth.